Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another episode of A Bit of Anything podcast. I am your host, Dr. Tyler, along with my good friend, Dr. Dan, as your co host. And Dr. Dan is going to introduce to us a myriad of topics for this evening that range from murder to football. And so, Dr. Dan, first off, how you doing? And what's on the docket for this eve?
I'm doing just great, thank you. It sounds like I have some kind of like murder mystery Halloween themed slate here for you, but we do want to talk about some things going around in the NFL. So what's happening this week? Well, the Buccaneers they had a really good game on Sunday night. It was really good in the way that it made me and Dr. Tyler smile so much. Um, the Steelers are 8-0. I know that's not
That
what everybody
hurts.
wants to hear. Yeah, I'm not that thrilled about it, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Tua Tagovailoa versus Kyler Murray, how that panned out, their first meeting. We'll dive into a little bit of the Adam Gase cesspool, talk about the most interesting winless team. And we'll also discuss why matchup and scheme is so important this year and why it's making such a big impact in games. But first, we're going to start with murder. We don't usually have murder on our podcast here, but I read an article about the late Miami Hurricane football player Bryan Pata, who was murdered in 2006, I believe. I sent a link to it to Dr. Tyler. He read it too, and we both found it pretty interesting and wanted to talk about it a bit on the air. It's an unsolved murder. He was 22 years old, potential to be a mid-round draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Um, he was a guy that was into what would you call it, renovating or rebuilding
Yeah,
cars
what
and
is the
selling
word for
them.
that? Restoring. There we go.
There you go, restoring. You can tell that we're big car
Yes.
guys. I mean, I have 7 muscle cars, and
I only have
I don't
one,
know, new
so
car for every day. So, yeah. So, Dr. Tyler, what was your thoughts when you were reading that article? When just give us your impression.
um so first off, this I had never heard of this. And as someone who enjoys not only like NFL football but college football, I was shocked that I had never heard of it. I've never once heard of this story before, and whoever wrote it, it's on ESPN. It's written by Paula Levine and Elizabeth Merrill. And first off, I have to say kudos to those two women on this story because I thought it was very well done. Um,
Agreed. I started reading it, didn't stop reading it
yeah,
until it was
it was
done.
really
It was
good,
good.
and it took me, I don't know, it probably took me 20 to 30 minutes to like read it because I it was so well written that I was like, I want to know like every detail of what happened with this. Like you said, he was between a second to third round pick, um, and just out of the middle of nowhere is killed, and they still don't know who killed him. And so, um, I mean, it first off is very well written, very intriguing, and I was really surprised that I had never heard of this case before. Had you heard it prior to reading the story about it?
You know what? I have heard of it um, because I'm kind of interested in well, like you were saying, like I'm interested in college football things. We're both interested in sports documentaries, that kind of thing. I've gotten into reading like um, college players or sports players that died during their career type of a thing. And I did come across Bryan Pata many times, but I remember when it happened, I remember it being on ESPN briefly, but it seems like the type of thing that should be like all over the ticker and on Sports Center and all this stuff, but it seemed like it was really brushed under the rug in a way. You know what? I haven't heard anything about it for many years. Like if you go to Wikipedia and search in Bryan Pata, it's pretty bare bones about the story. So the two writers of that article, I mean, they did a great job in painting a picture of the story. One of the things that I always hate when I see a long article that I'm interested in is when the journalist is sitting there talking about like what the people are doing. Oh, he's sitting on the couch. He rustles his paper as he picks up his cup of coffee and takes a long hour. Like, I don't care. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. And they didn't mess with that.
No.
You know, it was like fact,
Yep.
story, fact. And it was like, this is awesome. So I'm happy that exists, that they put that out there. If you even search YouTube, you're not going to find hardly anything except maybe a news clip or two of coverage. And I don't really know why. I mean, I think part of it is race. I hate to say it, but Miami, I don't know if you've ever been to the University of Miami, but it's just in a horrible neighborhood, horrible area. Like you leave that, you're in bad neighborhoods, you're in bad areas. Miami Hurricanes football has history of being kind of on the edge of legal and illegal and rough play and fighting and this and that. I think that a combination of like race, location, history of the football program, all play, and the fact that he wasn't a first rounder. Right. I bet you anything, if he was like a top 10 talent, it'd be a big deal, but he wasn't. He's just like another guy. And he hadn't made it to the pros yet. He really wasn't dominant if you look at his stats. He was more of like he has a high ceiling type guy. Like he's not there yet, but he's got a ceiling. And I don't know, but I think that kind of played into it not being a big deal. And of course, you know, you have the fact that the case is unsolved. I wanted to kind of go back to what you said is that, you know, you were saying that they don't know who did it, but I would argue they know exactly who did it. They just don't have any physical evidence to do anything about it. And that's why a case like this just sits and nothing happens, because they're not going to waste any more money investigating anything else if they're certain that they've figured it out. They just can't prove it in court.
The person they think did it right there at the scene of the crime.
Right. And I think that happens so much more than the public realizes. And if that can't happen, like the DA could look at the case and look at what they have and say, I can't make this stick. You need to bring me the gun, confession, fingerprints, DNA, something, fiber, something has to be there to link this. It can't be just what is now, and it's just circumstantial evidence. But why don't we explain kind of what happened? I'll try and do a little rundown of that, unless you want to give it a shot.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So.
Okay.
So Bryan Pata, I think it's Pata. Like we've said, projected second, third round draft pick is at least what they say in the article. One day gets home from practice. It's nighttime. He drove an Infiniti, which I thought was very interesting. It talked about how he had a quote unquote agent that was kind of I don't know, would you say feeding him money? Obviously illegal, because you can't do that as a college player, but was getting money from an agent. Like you said, Miami Hurricane football has always been on the cusp of like, do we really believe what's happening here, or are these guys getting paid? Very kind of, I don't know, you almost call it corrupt. For a college football team, they have always been on the edge. You know, the Michael Irvin's. I can't. You've probably seen the U documentaries that were on ESPN. There was, cocaine stuff flying around in the 80s and 90s. Probably continues today. But anyway, so Bryan Pata gets home and is shot through pretty much the temple of his head, and they cannot figure out who did it. There's a team meeting with one player in particular that is not there. And it seems very. I can't remember what his name was. What is. Was it Deshaun something?
Let me see. His last name is Jones. I took a bunch of notes and I don't believe I wrote his first name down. It was either Rashawn or Deshaun.
Yeah,
Was it Rashawn?
Jones.
Okay.
And I mean, we're in 2000. This is 2006. There's like one single shot, and there's like this 2-minute window of where he was alone and where he was with people. I think he had just dropped off some teammates at home. He pulled into his parking spot, is shot in the parking lot, and then there's this. The police are called. They show up. They try to save him. One of his teammates is actually right there at the scene as well. I think he said if he had shown up 30 seconds earlier, they probably would have caught.
Yeah, I think he was a minute or two behind.
Exactly.
You're right. He did say
and
that.
And so,
yes.
I mean, all of a sudden, there's like no evidence. All they have is like the bullet. I think that they recovered from his head, if I'm not mistaken. He's just laying in the parking lot, bleeding out. And I'm sure he was dead the minute he was shot, just from the placement that they say that it was at.
Yeah.
But they look at girlfriend, they look at ex-girlfriend, they look at girlfriend's brother, and they all have people that bought cars from him, even that I think were in Missouri and Washington. He had sold some bum cars with allegedly stolen rims. I mean, they looked at all kinds of people. Also, there were club fights, if I'm not mistaken, that he was
quite a few.
That he was,
and some of them involved gang members.
And there was at one point where there was a hit put out on him, and he called the member of the gang who'd put out the hit. If I remember right, the quote was like, "My people know his people," and so that hit allegedly was not. It was wiped out, taken away, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, that night they have this team meeting. Everybody's there except for one player, and that's Rashawn Jones, who he had fought with multiple times because
he dated his ex-girlfriend.
Yes. So
Rashawn Jones was dating the current girlfriend of Bryan Pata before Pata, and I think her name was Crosby. Was it Bodie? I forget what her name was. One thing I wanted to
Jada Brody.
Well, I was just thinking of Brody. Okay, Brody. One thing that I wanted to go back to that you had mentioned was that they did find the slug in his skull. But from what I read into the article, kind of in between the lines, they didn't determine what caliber it was, which would tell me that there was no casing found at the scene.
They couldn't
which would heavily suggest a revolver.
Okay. Yeah, it could very well be a revolver, because a pistol, in that amount of time to shoot and find the casing and pick it up and then, not leave any evidence whatsoever. Yeah, yep, that hadn't dawned on me, but I think you're probably right. It could have been a revolver.
And you know, they from my experience living in Baltimore, a 38 special, a cheap gun is really, really easy and really cheap to get in the hood. It's really cheap to get a 38. You can just get one that has 5 shells in it. That's all you get for, 30, $40. You commit something like this and you chuck it. And, a couple times in the article, they mentioned how this looked like a professional hit. And I just wanted to scream at them because in Baltimore City, there's absolutely nothing professional about what they're doing as the drug dealers there. It's like the Wild West in Baltimore City. But they've perfected what's called the walk by, where somebody just comes walking down the street, casually walking, and then just pulls out a gun right as they get to somebody and shoots them right in the head. And it's like nobody knows. It's not a drive-by. It's not this dramatic thing, and then the shooter just runs away. So all they have to do is get close enough and pull the trigger. It's really not that difficult. And it doesn't take that much intelligence or experience to do that. You can have somebody that's never shot a gun before in their life be successful at that type of murder if somebody doesn't see it coming, or if they've planned enough of where they're going to stand type of a thing. But, they said that the girlfriend heard arguing before the gunshot that night. That would lead me to kind of think that Pata knew or was not afraid of the assailant.
Right.
So whether the gun was out or not, Pata was still willing to be a little bit aggressive. And then one thing that I found that I wanted to link to that, which was very interesting, is a couple of Pata's teammates, I think the guys that he drove home, actually.
Yes.
I'd have to look back at that. If it was the guys that drove home, that would mean that this occurred in the car right before his murder. But Bryan Pata was on the phone with Rashawn Jones that night arguing.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And they said it was a pretty heated argument. I'm pretty sure it was the guys that he drove home. So now that I'm thinking about that, that's even worse for Jones. That shows that right before this man was murdered, he was arguing with this guy on the phone no more than 5 to 10 minutes earlier.
Let's see. It's
Um,
on the phone records. Yeah. It says just before Pata left, which he was leaving the university because they were just done with practice. And so right before he
right.
left, he said a tight end named Chris Zellner overheard him engaged in a heated phone call. He said, I wasn't really trying to eavesdrop. I just remember him talking about, like, if you want, man, come see me then.
Yeah.
But that was...
So maybe it was not in the car, but maybe it was right before he got in the car.
And then, so it says...
Can you see, was the same teammate the one that he gave a ride home to?
Says as Pata steered his SUV out of the parking lot, he saw teammate Josh Holmes and several other underclassmen waiting at a bus stop and offered them a ride to the dorms. Holmes said they laughed and talked about practice tapping fists as Pata dropped them off. So he dropped them off. It says it was dark as he drove 4 miles home. Hendricks, I don't remember his first name, but he was headed home too, but he had to stop for gas.
Okay.
It says he talked to his brother Fednall on the phone. Seemed like he was in a good mood. They talked about a car that they were fixing, and he said the brother said he heard wind blowing while his brother was speaking, and then suddenly the call dropped.
Okay. I think I know what that is. I think that's him getting out of the car.
Probably.
You're in Miami, so you're in the car. There's no wind. You get out of the car. The wind is on you. Maybe it's a few steps, and then he sees the shooter, and he just puts the phone down.
And then,
I mean, I think his brother literally almost was an audio witness to it.
He very well could have been. It said that his assigned parking space was near a dumpster and some shrubbery. And you're right. The lady said She thought she heard an argument. She left the apartment, walked down to the parking lot, and that's where she discovered her boyfriend unresponsive. Um,
Right.
and then
So,
she went back,
so I wanted
called
to say,
911, and it was about right then that the Hendricks teammate pulled up, and he tried to do CPR, talk to the phone, or talked on the phone to the 911. You can actually listen to that phone call, and then Pata's mom showed up, I think, like 10 minutes later. And then, but yeah, so whoever did it had to have known that he was like gonna be alone for that time. And it was a very brief
well, I would
second.
argue that, like, yeah, it was. But I mean, whoever did it knew that he was on his
Right.
way home, or knew that he would be there at that time, or would try to get
You
him
have
there.
to know what
The
his
one thing is
spot
that he
was
was
too, I would think.
right, but I think he was by the stairs. I think he was kind of in the common area. So like he made it from his car. I don't know what the walk would have been to that area. So we have no idea how much time elapsed or
What's
whatnot. But
interesting to
it does
me
seem like,
that just this just came to my mind, and sorry to interrupt you. She
yeah,
heard an argument, but she didn't hear a gunshot.
yeah, it's strange. But you know, like if let's even say we don't know much about that caliber. If it was a 22 pistol, I mean that's even cheaper than a 38 now that I think about it, and you can get those pretty
Right. You
easily.
can get a
I mean,
22.
and a 22 sounds like a pop, you know. You might not hear a 22, but there's a number of reasons that you might not hear a gunshot. Who knows if she was listening to music? Like who knows? Argument could be louder than a gunshot because of like bass echoing in a building. You know what I mean? So I could see that. The one thing I wanted to say about like the actual murder itself was that there is no overkill, so it suggests that it's like not spur of the moment rage. Like somebody didn't just walk up to him angrily and shoot a whole bunch of shots at him. Somebody just one time and gone.
Yeah.
That's why I think of that as Baltimore City walk-bys. It's just like vicious. They just walk up to you, shoot you, and run away, and you're dead. And there's nothing anybody can do. And then there was no robbery. He had several $100s, if not $1,000, in $100 bills
Yep.
in his wallet. So that tells me that the motive was personal. It was essentially like a hit. He was killed over something specific that he did or because of him. So the lack of robbery suggests to me that it's not like somebody jealous of his lifestyle. It's not like some hater that lives in the apartment complex. Otherwise, they'd steal his money, probably steal his car, right? So the one thing that everything kind of hinders on that they didn't really talk about in the article was the dynamic of the Jones, Brody, Pata triangle. Like, did Jones dump Brody? Did Brody dump Jones? You know what I mean? Because like that could matter.
Right. Yeah. And they never
Could
really
they
mentioned that.
possibly be right? So could there possibly be infidelity? Could Jones and Brody be engaged in some sort of stuff and Pata knows about it and that's why they're arguing about it? That's what I started to wonder was like, man, you have absolutely no way of knowing what that dynamic could be. And that dynamic could go as far as affecting the way that she protects Jones in a way, right? Because like even if she thinks like, man, I can't believe he did that, but I'm not gonna like rat him out because he was my man or something like that, you know? And so it's really interesting about that. But the whole thing to me, it just like everything says this guy was killed over something personal. And the story you told about them getting into a fight at the club and a hit being put out on him, that like that's all well and good, but honestly, like I don't really see people that live their lives in crime. They're making a living doing it. They have to make money. They have to put up with all this other stuff. They're going to go out of their way to find this guy and commit the crime that gets you sentenced to prison or death just because he got into a fight at a bar. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe they did put a hit out on him, but maybe it wasn't like what everybody thinks a hit means, where it's like, okay, we gave it to this hitman. Now there's a ticking clock before you're gone, buddy. That kind of a thing. Like, I don't really know. That sounds a little bit more Hollywood than reality. I think the reality is there was some dispute between Jones and Pata. We have no idea what it was. We don't know if it was related to his girlfriend Brody. We don't know. Could it be related to clubs? Could it be? I was even thinking, like, could Pata be involved in drug dealing?
I
He
think
has
that's
money,
yeah,
cars.
that's very
Yeah. So
easy. You could make that assumption. What's interesting, I was just reading
yeah,
a part. They don't know how many
sure.
gunshots were actually fired. They know that one killed
Mm,
him. That's how many hit. But there's, according to like quote unquote eyewitnesses, um, that they heard multiple shots, but
yeah.
there was only one that hit him. That they found. So I had forgotten that. Um,
That suggests that the shooter was standing far or further away from the victim.
yeah,
That means that there's a gap. It's not like like I don't know if you've ever seen The Wire. It's the Baltimore HBO show, but it depicts the stuff that happens in that city really well. I mean, there's a scene where a kid's standing there talking to his friends. He's at the edge of the sidewalk next to a light post, and there's people everywhere. It's the city. And there's a guy just walking down the street, looks perfectly normal. Suddenly he just turns, puts a gun up to the kid's head, blows his head off, everybody runs off. And that's just like that's how it happens, you know. But the fact that there was multiple shots heard and only one shot hit him, if you were standing there with a gun pressed against somebody's head, you don't need to shoot multiple
no,
shots. So that suggests that the person is far back. There's, you know, emotion. He's missing his shot. He's probably not trained with guns,
could
things
be.
like that.
And what's
Um,
interesting is, so I found that part. It says they estimate about 2 minutes elapsed between when he arrived and when he was shot. So there's like
that's a
this
long
two
time.
minute gap where nobody was there. So somebody could have, I mean, he could have seen the guy behind the dumpster even, or behind in the bushes, and like confronted him, and then been like, the guy just, was like, I'm gonna I the reason it makes sense that it was Jones is because Pata had beaten the snot out of him before. This wasn't the
Yes,
first time.
they had gun.
And so it,
Right.
to me, Jones makes sense because it's like, number one, he wasn't at the meeting that every other teammate was at. Number two, he was probably, they kind of made it sound like he was humiliated by Pata before. Like, they got into an argument and Pata just was, going off on him.
Yeah, it's interesting because I got that same impression, but I also got the impression that Jones wasn't intimidated by him. Did you get
Yeah,
that too?
maybe the first time he wasn't, but maybe this time he showed up and
This time he
he's
was.
like, no, I'm not gonna get beat up again. If anything happens,
Because
he's dead. Like, I'm just gonna bring this as
it makes
backup. I
sense.
don't know.
So I think we haven't mentioned this yet, but maybe I'll mention this real quick, not to interrupt you. But Bryan Pata was about 6'4", 285 pounds. He was a defensive tackle. Rashawn Jones was, what, 5'11",
Yeah, he was a
190
defensive
pounds,
back,
cornerback.
so smaller guy.
And smaller guy, right? But the other thing about Jones was he was highly recruited out of
He was
high
actually
school,
six
and
one,
he
six
fit.
one, 195. Yeah,
Oh,
I
six
just
one,
just
6'1",
scrolled
okay.
past that.
So he was highly recruited out of high school, but he wasn't living up to it at Miami. And he was basically in his last go around there. He had failed 3 tests for
Yep,
marijuana.
he'd been suspended
Um,
the day, that day actually. That what he was
yeah.
suspended from the team for marijuana. His third failed drug test. Yes.
So his college football career was over. His football career was over. And he probably isn't the kind of guy that's great at math or something like that. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like, here's a guy that's teetering on the edge of like, okay, nice try with football, but you're back to the streets. Like, good luck in Miami. So like, is it far-fetched that somebody in that situation wouldn't commit a crime like that? And let's, like, it's interesting you say that. What if Pata had something to do with, or he thought Pata had something to do with the test being administered, or whatever it was? I don't know. But there's a picture of Jones. There's a picture of several Miami football players taking a knee before a game, and there's a large picture of Bryan Pata on the field. I believe it was Jones' last game, and I found the look on his face is chilling. He's got this smirk, like I got you, dude, type of a thing on his face, whereas the other players they're kind of like, they don't know how to act. Yeah, it's a really chilling picture. I'll try to put that picture up, show people that. But yeah, I agree. I think that it makes sense that Rashawn Jones did this. Motive might not be entirely clear, and there's no physical evidence, and the police can't move forward with it. The other aspect of evidence that they do have that they haven't released is there was a sketch by a witness of somebody they saw running through the parking lot. Sketches aren't really great evidence, but I mean, let's just say Rashawn Jones has a close cropped hairstyle, and I don't know, he's African American, so that narrows it down. It's not an African American with a beard or an African American with cornrows or something like that. So if that sketch was released, maybe that would have people saying, oh, that looks exactly like Rashawn Jones, and the police would sit there saying, we know, but there's nothing we can do. We don't have any evidence.
Right. And
without a confession, there's nothing
was,
we can do.
From a worker who had been there that
Yeah.
night. But yeah, it's interesting that they never released that sketch to try and help out. But yeah, really well done. Like, I guess you could call this kind of a documentary, even though it's not a video documentary.
Yeah.
It's like it's a very well written piece. Great journalism in a time that journalism is mostly hot takes and not very much research goes into it. I was very impressed.
One sentence paragraphs. No, yeah, I was too. I think it was a very good article. So kudos to those ladies. I don't know. I hope that article might actually spark some interest in this case. I'll definitely post this on YouTube. This will be cut out of the podcast and put up separately so people will be able to hear it. Hopefully we get some people interested, because I don't think that nobody should be forgotten if their life has been taken away from them, and somebody that takes the life away and gets to go on with theirs, they don't deserve that either.
Yeah. What was interesting too is they actually interviewed him, and he said what happened 12 years ago happened 12 years ago. And then he said
it is what you expect.
It's got nothing to do with me. I didn't do it. And then he wouldn't answer any more questions about it. And so, just, I guess it really, you made a good point. It really isn't that strange. You're in Miami. There's a ton of unsolved crime. I think at the beginning of the article or the end of the article, they talk about how many crimes go unsolved. And it's just staggering. Like, the percentage of unsolved crimes is like 40 to 50%.
It's worse than people would assume. You watch your Miami Vice or whatever the hell CBS has tried to revive from the grave, and those type of shows make police work look like this stupid comic book type of a thing, and it's not. I mean, they go and find a body laying on the street with a bullet in the head. Do your job. Well, my job is, there's nothing that I can do right now. I'm going to go around and ask people. I'm going to see if there's any physical evidence. I'm going to talk to the family. I'm going to whatever. But if there's nothing coming of it, what can I do? People don't understand that. People also, I think, don't understand that, hey, the police probably worked very hard on this right away. But what are they supposed to do? Do you think that nobody else was murdered since then? There were probably 10 people murdered that weekend, maybe.
Yep.
Like, so he unfortunately, he was one of many, and there's a lot of unsolved crimes there. They can't spend an exuberant amount of time on
Agreed.
one case.
Yeah, which is unfortunate that any
It is
crime
unfortunate.
goes unsolved, but it's the reality of it. They have other things that have to um, that they have to do. They can't just put all of their resources into one crime, which unfortunate. And you're right.
Yeah,
We watch, CSI Miami or CSI Las Vegas or, shows like that. And it makes it, it's like a puzzle that gets put together in 30 minutes. And
very good way of
it's
putting it.
not. It's, it takes
No.
weeks, it takes months. Sometimes it takes years and years of collecting evidence. And the problem, I think, in this case is like there's just no evidence. There's no
Yeah,
physical evidence to put any. There's circumstantial evidence that would seem like, why did Jones
yeah,
change his phone number the day before this
right.
happened? Why did he skip the
Skip the
meeting?
meeting.
Yep,
Why?
all those types of things. And
Yeah,
so
all of
it's
those
very,
things.
very interesting as to, you know, lots of circumstantial, but like you said, if you take something to court, you have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this man killed somebody, because you don't want to take his life away if he didn't either, just based on circumstantial evidence. So, anyways, if you get a minute, you should definitely take the 20 to, I don't know, like I said, I think it took me about 20 to 30 minutes, because I was just like, now who's this person and what's this person, and trying to make the webs make sense. And so it was not a difficult read. It was more of just like trying to get who is everybody, what is their personality, and how they fit into the puzzle.
So just for the listeners to know, I just Googled Bryan Pata, Bryanpata. The very first two hits are both the article. It's called Death at the U, Who Killed Bryan Pata. So, yeah, I agree with Dr. Tyler. Go
And
check
it
it out.
was the kind of a
So,
creepy thing about it was the very beginning of how they found these weird, like a goat head and dead chickens and a dead bird in a bottle with his name on it. Like, that was weird. I don't know.
some Southern
Yeah, and
voodoo.
it's like yeah, that's weird stuff. They actually had to move his casket somewhere else because it was bugging the family, which that would bug me too. But I don't understand. Is it the killer? Is it just somebody that was a weirdo? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so no real easy way to transition, but we can just dive right into the lovely New York Jets. They're another floundering, semi not alive issue. So I don't know if anybody watches football, but the New York Jets almost won a football game last night. It almost actually happened. It was wow. Um, and what was the difference in the game? It was the chucker.
The chucker.
It was Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, the chucker. That's my nickname for him because that's what he does. He's not accurate. Like, he's not a precision quarterback. He's not going to pick you apart. He's not going to read the defenses and throw to the open window before the guy's there. He chucks it. He's got an arm and he chucks it. And that's how he got to that playoff run, Super Bowl MVP. But watching that game, it seemed like his arm gave them a little bit of a pep that they didn't have when Darnold was playing. And I thought to myself, the Patriots game, that's where Darnold saw ghosts. Remember, I'm seeing ghosts last year, I think it was, right? So he doesn't have a good record or even potential for versus the Patriots. Flacco's beat them in the AFC Championship game. So he comes up, maybe it wasn't an AFC Championship, maybe it was a divisional, but he comes up and throws. They scored 27 points with Flacco. And I was thinking, man, Adam Gase, who he still has a job as of right now, Tuesday night. So I'm assuming he's not getting fired this week. They do have a bye week though. But maybe Adam Gase should think about switching to Flacco. People are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? But listen, I mean, the Jets are going to be at that number one draft pick unless for some reason they put their heads up their ass and decide to win football games now for no reason. But why not get Trevor Lawrence, right? So what are you going to do with Sam Darnold? You're going to let him play behind your horrible offensive line and get him destroyed so that he has absolutely no trade value by next season? You just have to cut him. Why not just put him on the bench, let Flacco ride it out, and then trade Darnold at the end of at the beginning of the league year? That was my take on that. I know that Flacco's not like a great football player, and I'm not even saying he's a better quarterback than Darnold, but like right now, could he run a veteran offense a little bit better?
Yeah, and I'm like, I was so surprised by Flacco even showing any like moxie. I don't know if moxie is the right term,
Yeah.
but even showing.
Well, he has, yeah. He has this look on his, like, he has this look that's just like, it's almost like he looks like he doesn't get it.
He
You know what
kind of like
I mean?
his personality and Gase's like taco following GIF are kind of the same. They're kind of similar. Like Flacco doesn't even look like he belongs on a sideline
No.
anymore, and seems almost like disin disenchanted with the game. Gase looks like that all the
Yeah.
time too. So maybe it's a match made in heaven and we just didn't know it.
Maybe. I mean, I just, for some reason, I'm attracted to the dumpster fire of situation that is up there in New York. I was shocked when Adam Gase was hired by the Jets, and I still don't get it. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, dude, you better have a backup plan. Football's not going to work out for you if you go to the Jets. Sorry, bro.
Yes.
That's just the way it is,
And you know
man.
what's interesting is
So
it's like
there,
maybe I had this thought last night. Maybe Flacco is like showed just enough, and maybe if he continues to start, he showed just enough for some team to be like, all right, Joe Flacco's a free agent at the end of the year. Let's give him a shot. Like, let's get like
I guarantee
enough
they
to just
will.
get one more big payday and ride off into the sunset.
I hate to say, I don't think he's going to get a big payday, but I had an idea of where he could end up. Could be in that silver and black
No,
eventually.
we already have Nathan
Oh,
Peterman.
come on.
That's all we need.
Gruden has like an underground bunker full of ex-quarterbacks. Everybody knows it.
That we do, ranging from Deshaun Kaiser and Kerry Collins to maybe Joe Flacco and Nathan Peterman. You never know. You never know with
Jeff
Chucky.
Jeff George and yep. So the Jets are 0-9, and the Steelers are 8-0. And I know that stings, but that's about as much gloating as I'm going to freaking do because they haven't really played very well. I haven't seen 4 consecutive quarters of effort or football out of them. I really think that Devin Bush injury is huge. They did trade for Avery Williamson, which, I mean, for a 5th-round pick, why the hell not? Tomlin's apparently in love with the guy. They met at a pro day years ago and talked the whole day. They call him a football junkie. But, it's interesting. The Steelers seem to really pick it up when they have to, but they don't like I wrote an article and didn't post it, and then I did post it on Monday because I wrote it on Saturday after they named Garrett Gilbert the starter for the Dallas Cowboys, and I thought, I think that this is nonsense. I'm not going to put this up, but I was saying like this is a systematic trap game because the Steelers don't even know who the starter is going to be until the day before the game. The starter has no NFL tape on him. He played a year ago, so you don't even know like what has he done anything? What can he do? whatever. You have no idea how this guy's going to play. So being that, the Steelers would have to put together just a general defensive game plan just for probably the skill set players, I would assume. What can the receivers and running backs and tight ends do? We need to kind of contain that. It doesn't really matter who's playing quarterback. But then I got that feeling, or that Mike Tomlin feeling. I call it the losing to losing teams they should never lose to. And that's exactly what the Steelers always want to do. They have these great games where it's like, okay, they come back and beat the Titans. They come back and beat the Ravens. They're awesome. And everybody's like, they're going to blow out the Cowboys. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, they're going to lose this damn game. I'm going to be pissed off forever. Why the hell would they lose this game to this backup quarterback? But I don't know what it is, man. Do they come out and they're like sleeping? Do they think that it's going to be a cakewalk? Are they beat up from the last game? I don't know. But my prediction of them I think that they could have lost this game because of the situation. And I was almost right. Luckily, I wasn't. But good God, their offensive coordinator, Randy Fichtner, there was a point in the game where it was either 2 or 3 just straight draw run plays. And the last one was on 4th and 1, and they didn't get it. And it was just like, what the hell are you doing? Damn it. Put some other people in the game. Get an offensive lineman out there. Block. What the hell are you doing? And then on the 4th and short at the end of the game, it's like this soft pitch. Here, we'll have 2 blockers out in front because we've got 4 or 5 guys on the other side of the line because what is football? So we'll follow these guys, and you'll get tackled for a 4-yard loss. It'll be great. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, literally, that's the kind of bullshit that cost Todd Haley his job. But Todd Haley conducted, like, the most prolific offense the Steelers have ever seen statistically, and Fichtner still is like, I don't know which receivers to put out on the field. Like, I wonder what James Washington can do. I wonder what Juju Smith-Schuster can do. It's like, get this guy the hell out of there. And tell Ben Roethlisberger to, like, drink extra coffee, have a Monster Energy drink. Dude, get up a little bit for the game. You can't just show up midway through the third quarter every week. You just can't do that.
Does Washington play anymore?
The football team?
Well, I know they stink, but...
Oh, the receiver,
Washington,
yeah. He had a receiving touchdown, but his targets are, like, nothing. So he's being phased out.
Is it Damian Johnson? Deontay Johnson.
Deontay, and then we've got Chase Claypool, and he's a monster.
Going to be a good receiver. He fits that Pittsburgh Steeler mold so well, just like Martavis Bryant. But I think he's thicker than Martavis Bryant. Like
he is, man. He's pretty thick, but he's just as fast as Martavis Bryant was. So yeah, he's fast twitch. He's agile. It's pretty wild. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster is the type of Steelers receiver too. He's like a Hines Ward prototype. They should really try to keep him. And Deontay Johnson, I think, has upside. He just there's so many plays this year specifically where it's like the ball is right behind him, or it's just off his fingertips, or he fell, or just some BS kind of stuff. I don't know. He's trying too hard, or if he just needs to slow down and let it come to him. I'm not sure, but I think their offensive problem is they really don't have an identity. They don't know who the hell they are, and they don't have an identity with a running game. That's why it would have behooved them to go out and sign Fournette when he was a free agent, because they just needed somebody else back there. Connor's good. He's serviceable. He can get it done as part of a system, but I don't think he's like a bell cow. So I'm not sure what the hell's going on with the Steelers. It's driving me nuts. My blood pressure, my heart, they don't enjoy these games.
But you're 8-0 for the first time in team history. So you got to be a little bit excited.
I know. I mean, I'm a little bit excited because I understand where that puts their playoff seed. They only need a few more wins to be talking for a second seed. And that's great, but do I have any confidence that they could turn around and do what they did again, like beat a team like the Titans and then beat a team like the Ravens and then say beat another team to win a Super Bowl? I don't feel that yet. And to be honest, that's all I really care about is like I want an AFC championship at the least. And I really want a Super Bowl win. I don't even want to just go to the Super Bowl. So 8-0 is fantastic, but to me it means nothing. The regular season, whatever. Getting that top playoff seed would really mean a lot for the Steelers. I think it would I think it helps Ben to play in Pittsburgh. So that would be huge for them. But I'm concerned. I don't like it. I mean, the Ravens ran all over them. And I mean, this past weekend they made Ezekiel Elliott look like a football player. And I don't know if you didn't watch the game, but they cut to Ezekiel Elliott multiple times throughout the game. Not just like a few times in one drive, and he's sitting there like this the whole time.
I can't see your face.
You didn't see it?
Because it says it's a poor connection.
Oh, okay. I mean, he's just sitting there like his mouth hanging open, his lower lip hanging down,
Ezekiel Elliott.
his jaw just relaxed, and he just looks like if you put a bubble next to his head to caption what he was thinking, it would be duh. Yeah. Like, with like 11 H's. I mean, that's what he looked like.
It'd be a picture of Homer Simpson.
Exactly. Oh man, so I'm not that happy about it. I mean, I am, but I'm not. Like I recognize what it is, but I recognize the fact that it might not be. I don't know how to explain it. In years past, if a team's 8-0, you don't want to play that team. But the Steelers, like, if you play them, no matter who you are, like, well, they're going to play the Bengals this week. And I expect it to be, let's say, like a 27-14 type of a thing. But I don't expect it to be a 13-point gap until pretty late. I think the Bengals are going to hang around. And it sucks. It's the damn Bengals. And they're going to make Joe Burrow look like Joe Montana. And, I mean, he's going to throw like 370 yards and all this other crap, but he'll have a couple fumbles or interceptions or something. But it's like if the things don't fall perfectly for them, which it doesn't work that way in the playoffs. You don't get that kind of crap luck in the playoffs usually. So I don't know. It worries me that they can't put teams away. And it worries me for Thanksgiving night when they face the Ravens again. I'm kind of concerned if they're going to be able to adapt from that first game. So, yeah, that's where I stand on my boys.
Well, I think I'm probably a little bit higher on them than you are. If somebody would have told me the Raiders would be 5-3 at this point after a fairly brutal schedule, I would have said that you're smoking pot. Or probably more like cocaine, because you're just
cocaine.
I don't know. Could have been you're smoking something.
But the Raiders are doing pretty well.
All right, but it's the same thing. It's like you can't. Like, they had multiple times against the Chargers Sunday to just put it away, to ice it, to just like stomp. To just end the game, I guess, to be politically correct. They didn't. And that drives me insane, because it shouldn't have come down to two goal line fade routes that were broken up by our second-year defensive back. It really shouldn't have come down to that. And yet it did for like the second week in a row. There was another... Well, actually, let's see. Who did they play before the Chargers? They played the Browns? Was it the No, I can't remember. Anyways, but every time that the Raiders are
Broncos
winning,
last week,
I'm like, I've got this pit in my stomach. Like, this game isn't over, and there could be like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they're up by 3 touchdowns, and there's just this sinking feeling in my gut that
You
they're
know what?
not gonna win this game by very much if they win it at all. And so
It's interesting that you say that because I know that feeling. And I used to get that every single time I would watch like the Patriots, like the year that they were going undefeated. Anytime a team got a lead on them, you'd be sitting there like, damn it. Like I know that they're going to still lose. Like this is just annoying. Like what, so it's that feeling. But as you were talking about that, it made me think like, so are comebacks becoming the standard now? It's like no team, no lead is safe. I mean, you have like Patriots beating the Falcons in the Super Bowl as a comeback. You got the Chiefs coming back against the 49ers in the last Super Bowl. You got many comebacks this year. I mean, look at the Falcons and Chargers, how many games they've blown. And the Chargers, I mean, the Falcons almost blew a game to the Broncos. So I don't know what that says. It used to be in the NFL, like you get like a 14-point lead and you're like, it's lime time, like you're having a great afternoon. Nowadays, I see like a 28-point lead and it's like, I'm not impressed. Like they're just going to come back. It's only 28
the Broncos
points.
came back on the Chargers, not this week, but the last week.
Yeah.
And ended up winning.
Yeah, and they almost came back on the Falcons last week.
And this week they came back against the Falcons. It's like...
And they're not that talented at the receiver position. Locke is pretty good.
Judy, and that's about it.
Judy's pretty good, yeah. That's it. Sutton's hurt.
And Tim Patrick
so I don't know, but I mean...
to inspire confidence. Noah Fant, I don't think has lived up to his draft spot.
He was better last year.
Yeah. I think he's good, but it's not like... I think they took him in the first round. So that, to me, you want more production out of that person. I wouldn't take a tight end in the first round anyways. That's just me personally. But, it would have to be weird how how you get these different matchups. And we talked about that. I was like, why in the heck are the Steelers should have no business being in the position that they were in against Dallas. The Titans got throttled by the Bengals. It's just like every week.
It just doesn't make sense.
There's just a few games that
you got the Buccaneers Saints this week.
It doesn't make any sense at all. Who was the one that we were talking about? I think the Bills.
The Bills versus the Seahawks. But I was explaining that because the Bills head coach is McDermott, right? McDermott, he was the defensive coordinator with Seattle, I believe. Or at least he was a defensive coach there.
Who?
Sean McDermott, the Bills head coach.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't know where he came from.
Where did he come from? Because I was thinking that it was the Seahawks, so... Let's take a look here. Oh, it was the Carolina Panthers defensive coordinator. Yeah, but it's really interesting because the Bills came out with this game plan where it was like, okay, the Seahawks want to throw the ball. It's an aerial circus in Seattle, so nobody's expecting us to do that. So let's do that. And they blow the Seahawks out of the water. I mean, the Seahawks actually came back in that game. The Bills had to score late to keep their lead. What was the final score? Like 48-38 or something in that ballpark?
Let's see.
(44-34). So it was 27-20 at the end of the third quarter. And then Bills scored 17, the Seahawks scored 14 in the fourth quarter. But it's interesting because I was thinking about the matchups there. I was mistakenly under the impression that McDermott had coached in Seattle, but what I was thinking was that McDermott was the coach in Carolina. When he had I'm blanking on the cornerback's name.
Was it Norman?
That went to Washington. Yeah, Norman. So he's comfortable with his players. He has this zone scheme that he's set up. I don't know. I haven't watched the replay of that game. I should, but I'm curious to see how they covered Metcalf and
I think Metcalf had a
what's the
pretty
other
good
guy's name?
game. Even though they lost,
I
I
think he
think
did
he still
too.
had a killer game.
Yeah. But it is interesting. It seems like these comebacks are happening more and more often. It seems like the divisional games are, man, they're up in the air. The Bucks blew the hell out of the Saints blew the hell out of the Bucks. That was just a crazy game. You look at the stats for that game, and it's just wild. And I hope that it has something to do with Antonio Brown showing
I
up.
wish
I
he
hope
would
it
have.
just turns into a
I
huge
wish he
shit show.
would have just like had a heart attack from all the cocaine that he
Ugh,
snorted.
he looks a little overweight. I thought he
It
looked
wouldn't
overweight.
surprise me. There's only so much you can do away from a football team
Yeah,
for what 2 years now, year and a half.
yeah, essentially. The last time he truly played consistently was in the 2018 season. So, but yeah, let's touch on our last subject here quickly. We'll talk about Tua and Kyler. They had a pretty good showdown going there. And I know you and I had a quarterback draft a few weeks ago. We were talking about what quarterbacks we would take in the NFL. We both kind of decided to pick Josh Allen of the Bills that we just spoke about. And we were kind of concerned about these running quarterbacks, this new hybrid style of throw and run to get your yardage. Um, Kyler Murray's a small guy. I don't know what they have him listed as. He looks like he's 5'7", 5'8" when he's playing football, but he's thick. He's 200-pounder. Two is a little bit smaller. I think he's a little bit more slender. He might be a little bit taller, but they look very similar. Two is left-handed. Kyler's right. They're both wearing number 1. They're back-to-back number 1 or first-round draft pick quarterbacks. I have to say that I've been impressed with
So
Kyler Murray.
they list
He
Tua as 6 foot 217.
okay.
And let's see here.
So I've been impressed with Kyler's arm, his ability to play in the pocket, and then kind of use the run when the play breaks down. But he's not like there are plays where if you watch Lamar Jackson, it's like 1-2, okay, I'm running. And it's just like dude, you don't even know what your receivers are doing in that time. Like you gotta hold it together. Then there are times where Jackson holds it for 10 seconds in the pocket. So I don't know, but I like Kyler's style a little bit more. He's smaller. It makes me worry about the injury potential if he gets hit. But he's got this speed to him. He's really quick step. He's a chop step runner. Chop, 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 chop. He's going pretty quick. He knows to get out of bounds. He's got a nice deep ball. Looks a little strange the way he delivers it, but it gets there. So I was impressed with him. I was also impressed with Tua. Well, Tua, his team won. But the way that I watch Tua, when he runs the ball, it causes me a little bit of concern. I think that he's a little bit more reckless, a little less aware. That's what it looked like to me. He has an injury history. That hip injury, I'm kind of surprised he was able to come back from that. I thought that might be a career ender because it was for Bo Jackson, but of course he severed an
Right.
artery.
Yeah, and that's the big difference is that he ended up having to. He had
Yeah,
bone death, necrosis.
necrosis. Yeah,
And
necrosis.
they didn't really have. I don't. They didn't have technology back then that they do
Sure.
now, which is unfortunate because they probably would have seen that tear in the artery and tons of blood in the area. But
Yeah. They just
yep.
replaced his hip,
Well,
didn't they? Yeah.
he dislocated it.
He had
They
a couple
reduced
surgeries
it, and then like that bone just necrotized. It died, and then he ended up having to have a hip replacement, which he still played baseball on, by the way.
Yep.
And
Yes, he
for a
did.
little while.
But definitely you cannot play
No,
football in that. And that would be that'd be the most disgusting thing to see a hip dislocation.
yeah, that would not be fun.
Yeah.
But
But
I don't know.
but what do you think about them?
Unfortunately, I haven't
Tua and
seen
Kyler.
a very good sample size of either one. I really like Tua at Alabama, and I haven't really seen him since his injury. I like Murray had 100. I think he had 110 yards rushing on Sunday, which is like crazy to me because he also had, I think he had over 200 yards on Sunday
Yeah.
passing.
That's what I notice about him is he is what I criticize Lamar Jackson for not being. He is a pocket passer that also just happens to be a fast twitch, fast runner that you let him get out of the pocket. Good luck. You know what? You know what Kyler does that I like? He gets out of the pocket and he starts to veer toward the sideline. That's his like safety. You know what I mean? Like he's like, I'm going to get my yardage and get out of bounds. You're not going to tackle me. Whereas Lamar Jackson, I think he thinks he's Superman, and he's just like, I'm gonna juke everybody. I'm gonna
And he
do
can't do
everything.
that in the NFL. Like he's done
Not like that.
that his entire life up until now. You're playing with elite people at every position, even backups, dude. Like backups are people
Yeah.
that are just insanely quick. You're not. He may be
Oh
able
yeah.
to juke a few people, but he's not gonna make the entire team look like a bunch of fifth grade players like he did in
Right.
college. And I think
And he doesn't understand. You got people analyzing how you
exactly.
play. The coaches are on that level too. They're not just sitting around like, okay, our turn. You know, it's not like that. They are dissecting what you do well and what you don't do well, and they're putting together a way to screw you up next time they see you. Sorry to interrupt
Right.
you.
No, you're fine. Um, but yeah, I didn't really like Kyler Murray coming out of Oklahoma, and it was because of his size. They list him as 210 or at 5'10", 207. So
He's not
and I don't
5'10".
think so either. I think he might be 5'9" with his cleats on. Like he is
Yeah.
he looks like an illegitimate child of the offensive lineman is what he looks like.
He is he you know what, I hate to say it. He looks like when you're like messing around on Madden with your friends and you have a running back that's 7 feet tall, 400 pounds, and your quarterback's 5'5",
Right.
150. You know, it kind of looks like that. And it almost like in the game looks like the real life, like when he threw a bomb in that game, it looked like a Madden throw because it's like, okay, here goes the arm back real quick. Suddenly it's out of there and it's flying through the air. And you're like, that little dude just did
And what's
that.
crazy is
Like,
you knew he was
wow.
drafted by the Athletics, right? For baseball. First
Yeah.
round draft pick.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. That's a
it
lot of
is a
money
lot of money,
there.
but I think he ended up making more in football than he did in baseball. But I
Probably for
just,
now.
maybe his size isn't, maybe size of height is not everything anymore. I almost feel like Arizona has kind of schemed around that, and like I said, I haven't
Yeah.
really seen Arizona play very much. I used to have to watch them every Sunday because I lived in Arizona. Now
Yeah.
I could watch other people like the Broncos every Sunday. Um,
I know it's terrible.
it
Me too.
sucks. I'm like, can
I
we
have to watch
watch
the
the
Broncos.
Cardinals instead? Like, I'd take watching the Cardinals. I can stand watching the
Yeah.
Cardinals much better than I can tolerate watching the freaking Chiefs or the Broncos every week. But yeah, so uh, as a student, I'm not a student of the game. I like football, but I don't know all the nuances of the game. But I probably ought to spend a little bit of time watching Murray because this year they've actually done pretty well. I
Yeah.
think they play the Seahawks this week. They already beat the Seahawks once, and so that's
It will be fireworks in
yeah.
that game.
So I probably need to spend some time watching them before I would say, I would choose Murray over Vailoa or vice versa. But out of
Sure.
college, I would have taken Tua. that I liked him more out of college than I liked Murray because of size, of height. Um, Even though Tua's, relatively small. I mean, Josh Allen's what, 6'5" or 6'4" or something like
Yeah,
that?
we were looking at that. He's between 6'4" and 6'6", and he's
Right.
about 240.
He's
He's a
and
big dude,
Roethlisberger's what?
and that's what. Well, he came out of college at 6'5",
I bet he's
241.
pushing more like
I'm thinking he's
300
probably
right now.
270. Yeah, I think he's been close to 300 pounds in his career for sure.
But
He's not 241.
yeah,
No, but yeah, that's the size that I like. I like that big size because I want you to be able to see over the line. I want the pass to come out at good velocity from your hand. If it comes 7 inches higher off the turf, I think that it can go further. I think you can throw it into tighter windows. I think you can absorb hits. I just like that prototypical size. And I think you're right that the size, people are going to be more accepting of shorter quarterbacks because of guys like Kyler.
did you know Justin Herbert is 6'6"?
Yeah, he's a big
He's
boy.
like 6'6", 2. I think they listed him at 240, but he looks like a dang beanpole. Like,
Yeah, I mean he'll put on some decent weight in the next few years. Like he'll just gain a little bit of weight so that he can absorb the hits. He's a
yeah,
perfect size, man. I mean
he's a good.
he
He will
is
be good.
good.
Yeah.
He's on a crap team and he is
Yep.
lighting it up. And he's a quiet guy, so he's not going to be out raping hookers all night long on cocaine or anything
You
like
hope
that.
not, but L.A. can change
You hope
people,
not,
man.
but I guess so. So one last thought on Kyler that was kind of interesting. I saw his post-game press conference after losing the game to Miami. He was asked 2 or 3 questions. This was like the clip that I saw. He didn't answer. He kind of sat there like, we got to do better. And it was like, I wasn't sure what to make of it. I don't know if is there red flag personality problems there? Was he just really upset and he's a competitor? Because one thing I hate is when football players start to get angry with the media. I mean, yeah, sometimes they screw things up, but they have every right to ask you questions. And if they're like that one play in the fourth quarter when they did this, and you're like, oh, you're talking when they run like the Ghost Shadow Blitz 9-7Y, and then they're like, I don't know. I mean, I don't have your playbook. You know what? I hate that kind of condescending crap. They see the stuff at home. They can tell you didn't play well or that your kicker missed the field goal. Why can't they ask you what you were thinking at the end of that game and you can't come up with something better to say? I don't know. So that rubbed me wrong. Hopefully that's just one incident, but I think that he could have some promise there.
Yeah, I think they both have good careers ahead of them if they can. Number one with Murray, if he can stay healthy, and with Tua, his hip is kind of worrisome, but it seems like he's pretty rehabbed, and doing it.
Yep.
Hopefully, they both have good careers because that could be some fun, you know, battles to watch in the future. I know the Cardinals and the Dolphins don't play a ton, but it'd be nice to have both teams relevant again. There's just like
it'd be good for the league to set up a way for these games to be played.
Yeah. Where they're like going up against each other, good quarterback versus good quarterback, and draft class versus draft class. Yeah, I agree. That would be fun to see those happen a little bit more often. But I get to see Mahomes and Herbert for like the next 10 years, so that should be fun.
That sucks.
Twice a year. I'm not really worried about Drew Lock.
I hope I don't have to see Lamar Jackson for the next 10 years.
I think Drew Lock is just not. I think he's decent. I don't think he's great.
Yeah.
And I don't really know that he ever will be great. So.
He's a wild card, I think.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know with him.
It is difficult. He's got some good games and he's got some bad games. But no, I think Murray and Tua have some very good football ahead of them, and it should be fun and Herbert for that matter, should be fun to watch them kind of grow and mature.
Yeah,
But
I
anything
agree.
else for this evening?
That does it. We've solved the
Yes.
murder. We've figured out what's wrong with the
Yep.
NFL. Figured out who's good, who's bad,
Who's
who's
a
a
chucker?
chucker.
And we've also
So
figured out how to cure hip injuries. So I think our
yeah,
job for this evening is done. Thank you so much for
yeah.
tuning in to a bit of anything podcast. Dan, where can they find you on the internets?
We got noholdsbarredsports.com, and we have a YouTube channel, No Holds Barred Sports. We're going to be posting these videos a little bit more recent or more frequently. Actually, it's NHB Sports at YouTube. We've been having some issues with the podcast getting flagged and removed immediately after being posted. We've had absolutely no explanation as to
Yes, it's a
why.
conspiracy.
Yeah, they just don't want us out there rallying you people into a mob and taking over the damn world.
Yes,
So,
so hopefully we get those wrinkles ironed out. But anyway, look up
yes.
Dan on his website, and you can find our YouTube channel. A bit of anything. Is it a bit of anything? It's a bit of anything.
The Bit of
Yep.
Anything podcast, yeah. So I'm thinking about adding another channel for that as well. Um, Once I can get these videos up and not have them removed, it will kind of segue into me being able to get this out so that more people can hear it, so that people can actually hear it. I don't know if anybody listens, but um, that's what we're trying to do. So we're
Yep.
fighting the good fight. We're trying to take over the
Absolutely.
world. Come
Yep.
join us.
Just
It's a
like the
mob.
mice
It's crazy.
taking over the world.
Yep.
Yes,
Pinky in the
Pinky in
brain.
the brain.
Yeah. What are we going to do tonight?
Always just trying to take over the world, Pinky. But
That's it.
anyways, from
That's it.
Dr. Tyler and Dr. Dan, have a good evening. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.